Welcome to Kentucky.
The birthplace of Abraham Lincoln and built on the largest cave system in the known world. The home of Daniel Boone, Hunter S. Thompson, horse racing, and bourbon.
That when the hour grows late, the bluegrass state becomes the breeding ground for realms beyond those familiar to the human race. In the east, ghosts, spirits, and ethereal entities roam the hills and hollers.
In the north, Mothman beats his wings along the banks of the Ohio River.
To the west, small green creatures stalk farmhouses and disappear without a trace when shot.
While in the south, the energy of the Veiled Witch is palpable just over the border. Joining with us as we investigate just what goes wrong in the bluegrass night.
And ask the question, how many coincidences are too many? There's no need to check the clock.
There's no need to check the clock. Time is an illusion.
Time is an illusion.
And it's midnight.
It's midnight. In Kentucky.
In Kentucky.
In Kentucky. In Kentucky. In Kentucky. In Kentucky. Ladies and gentlemen, it is the Midnight Hour once again for Midnight in Kentucky. I'm Ben.
I'm Steven.
Tonight on Midnight in Kentucky, we are speaking with Daniel Wilson, a sky watcher, weather tracker, and operator of the Storm Alert Center page on Facebook and his website. Daniel has had many different strange encounters in our area. These all link back, of course, with the UFOs over Central Kentucky that we did a show on just a few weeks ago. Daniel reported a orange fireball over the parkway leading into the Eli corridor of the... What parkway is that?
It's the Cumberland Parkway.
Of the Cumberland Parkway. In the early months of last summer. But as we corresponded with Daniel, we found out that he's actually had several different encounters.
Yeah, very many. Yeah, and once we got discussing with him, he's like, you know what, we would love to interview you on the podcast.
Yes, and not only based on his encounters, but Daniel is a witness who has several different knowledge bases that he can draw this information from, and he's the perfect witness, really.
He is, and when he sees something in the sky, he knows that it is or is not a satellite, it is or is not a star, or an airplane, helicopter, and the list could go on. So when he sees something in the sky that he can't explain, he does make the perfect witness, as you were saying.
Right. Before we get to that interview, though, we are going to touch on something that we talked about with Daniel, that Daniel has observed himself, that he's had friends report to him on, and that is the recent spat of mystery drones all over the United States. For those of you who read my column in the Lake Cumberland Current, you may remember that I wrote about these mystery drones over Kentucky in late September of this year, or of 2019. I keep forgetting it's 2020. This past September, I wrote on these mystery drones here in Kentucky, and in the past few weeks, we've saw it come out that these drones are over the western United States as well, and it seems like almost, that these two events correlate very heavily.
Yeah, and it just this past week, it come out that these drones, something similar, but I think it's more on a massive scale than what we're experiencing here.
Right.
Out on the Colorado-Nebraska line. I think it's in Lincoln County and Colorado, maybe Washington County, Nebraska area. And and I've done a little bit of research, and the area is a rural area, similar to us. It's kind of outside Colorado Springs, I think maybe an hour or 2 hours.
Okay.
One side note, in the area of Colorado there is a big military industrial complex footprint.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah. That's where a lot of the contractors and stuff are located. Or it was at one time. I'm assuming they're still out there.
Right.
I'm thinking NORAD is not in Colorado Springs, but it's in Colorado. To me, that these things are not being picked up on radar, per what stories I've read.
Sure.
No one knows who they are. No one's coming forward. Similar to here, the police are saying they don't know what it is, and they're actually joining in, kind of trying to track down where these things are going and what they're doing.
And of course, when I wrote the article for the paper here, I called the sheriff's department, local police department, and state police, and all of them confirmed that they said that they didn't have anything to do with these drone sightings. So what exactly happened in Colorado that spurred this on? How did...
I think there was a large amount of citizens in this area that have noticed these drones flying. And here's the kicker that I noticed. They say they always come out around 7 p.m. and they disappear around 10 p.m. Mm-hmm. And they're flying at night.
In formation.
In formation, similar to here.
Right.
And here's the thing is, in order to fly at night, I'm not a drone expert, so if someone knows different, please send us an email or some post and let us know. But to my understanding, you have to have a waiver from the FAA
right
before you can fly at night. Sure. Because, you could always have interference with aircraft, helicopters, or anything like that.
Right.
So, FAA is saying that they know nobody who has a waiver. They're also investigating.
Sure.
Somebody who's kind of out there familiar with drones, I guess some of the amateur drone operators, are saying these drones are huge.
Right.
And they cost as much as a new car.
Right.
When there's 15 to 20 of them flying in formation, that's pretty costly. Not just every, amateur drone operator is going to have that type of money to toss into their hobby.
Right.
And then get out at 7 to 10 and fly in formation.
Right.
Some articles I've read about people who's knowledgeable and maybe has a military background in this stuff says they are flying in formation and it's almost like they're searching for something.
Search patterns
or searching for someone or somebody.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. And of course, this all connects with Kentucky because we're seeing very similar events here. Maybe not on that level, but slowly as these things have come out, it seems like more and more people, as we have questioned this, it seems like more and more people have come to us and said, hey, we're seeing these drones too. We talk about it tonight with Daniel Wilson over in Casey County, which is the adjacent county to where we're located. Several people are seeing these drones in formations of 15 or 20 at a time in the night.
Exactly. And again, they're flying in formation, which I kind of studied up on it and putting them in formation. I don't know if you've seen the Shanghai New Year celebration.
Yes,
Instead of fireworks, they use drones.
Yeah.
And that was really neat. It's almost like a computer program. They synchronize them, and then they just pattern, it's a pattern thing, and they fly in a pattern. So all you need is like a host, and then you pop in the coordinates that you want them to fly, and they go there.
Sure.
So, but the formation thing is they're all coming from the same place,
right?
Obviously.
Yeah.
And then they're doing the same type of flight pattern around the area, similar to here, people are seeing. And I guess what makes me wonder about it is why is there, I kind of look for connections. Is there a similar company located in that area that's here?
Sure.
Because maybe doing drone research.
Yeah.
I did come across the place in Hazard, Drone Development and Research Company, an R&D company.
Right.
That's based out of Hazard, Kentucky. Mm-hmm. It's kind of, I couldn't find much information on it. I looked at it. It's run by somebody who's ex-military.
Right.
That started the program over there, and it's kind of was mentioned in a news article that I found from a couple years ago that was talking about maybe creating new jobs in that eastern Kentucky part.
But if these drones were coming from an R&D facility, they would still have to undergo the FAA regulations.
Yes, yeah. If it was an official company,
right,
I would think they would have to acknowledge that it's them.
Sure. Yeah.
In my personal opinion, and I mean, maybe there's a logical explanation, but this looks like some type of black ops or some type of company that's probably skirting underneath the law.
Very much so.
And, so warning to the listeners, it is illegal to down a drone.
Right.
Either
you can't take them down.
You cannot take them down either by gunfire or by jamming the radio signals.
Sure.
So please do not do anything like that.
Do not try and take these drones down. But it's interesting because, like I said, we are discussing these drones with Daniel tonight. When we got to sit down with Daniel, the information that has come out recently, which has been all over the news, from Mysterious Universe to NPR to the Micah Hanks program, it has been everywhere from conspiracy and paranormal channels to mainstream news channels. But when we sat down with Daniel, this was still unbeknownst to us. We didn't know that these things were happening in Colorado or Nebraska. All we knew is what was happening here.
Yeah, it literally happened the next week.
Yeah. After we sat down to have this conversation with Daniel, we found out that this had been happening in Colorado and Nebraska. It's also interesting. I myself have saw these drones, and I know that you guys have saw these drones, right?
Yeah, I have seen them before in that area.
Yeah. The Colorado and Nebraska reports that they are as big as a car. A lot of the drones that I've been seeing are smaller drones. They behave in odd patterns. They hang over the field across from my house a lot. They hang over my house a lot. But in one instance on the way home, we saw, and I wrote briefly about this in the paper. I didn't say that I was the witness, but, podcast extra, I saw this for myself. This drone was as big as a car. And you and I have had private conversations about that instance several times.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Makes you wonder. I've never saw the formation drones, but it's still, this drone activity has amped up very slowly in our area since late summer until now. And it's odd that, we're having the same instances, very similar instances to what they're reporting in Colorado.
Yeah. And the timing is odd, and I'll kind of wonder, and I did a brief internet search to see if there's other areas that this is occurring in.
Right.
I couldn't really find anything, but that doesn't mean it's not happening.
Yeah.
I mean, because it could be like out here, not a lot of people seeing it, and I don't know how the Colorado one got such blowing up news story.
Yeah.
I'm not sure who picked it up first, and then other people started grabbing the story.
Right.
But I have no doubt this is happening in other places in the United States.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, without a doubt. What do you think these drones could be? What do you think they are? Do you think that they're a search pattern that's out searching for somebody?
They're either that, like they're searching for something, or maybe somebody, or they're doing some type of new surveillance technology, which is highly likely.
Right.
No doubt there's somebody operating these from somewhere.
Yeah.
They're coming out at night. And I guess, it'd kind of be funny, but not. A lot of people saying, well, why can't you take a picture of these or something like that?
Sure.
But it's kind of like trying to take a picture of the moon or a star with your phone.
Mm-hmm. I tried to take a picture of the one. There was one over my house on January 2nd. I tried to take a picture of it, and there was no way you could get a picture of it. Your cell phone cameras are not capable of doing that.
Right. We don't have that good of camera technology.
Yeah.
Now, during the interview with Daniel, he does mention something he caught on his weather camera.
Yes.
And we won't do any spoiler alerts.
No, but it's definitely in there. Well, and that brings me to my whole thing. In that instance, sounds very paranormal. The one with Daniel that he captured on camera. And in the article that I wrote, I theorized that maybe these things, and this is a leap, it's a theory, but they may correlate. I theorized that these drones were similar to the black helicopter phenomena that they talk about over Skinwalker Ranch, that they talk about elsewhere, in which, there have been several cases of these black helicopters flying around without propellers or without any means of propulsion, totally silent. And there have been reports of these black helicopters almost transforming from a black helicopter into a flying saucer. And I know that's out there. That's a pretty out there theory, but in our area, these drone reports coincide with areas of high strangeness where everything from UFOs to Bigfoot sightings have occurred.
Right, and it's all within the 37th parallel.
Exactly. Is the Colorado's in the 37th parallel?
No, I did a check on that.
Okay.
And it's not. I was wondering, but it's not.
Jeez, that would, man. But yeah, right where we are, all of this occurs in the 37th parallel, and everything that we're going to talk about with Daniel tonight occurs in the 37th parallel. There's a lot of information in this episode that we've talked about in past episodes. There's a lot of new information in this episode that we're going to be talking about in the future. We want to deeply thank Daniel for coming on and for talking to us and sharing his experiences with us. A lot of these experiences are some next level high strangeness. So we're going to take a quick break. We will be right back with Mr. Daniel Wilson. Thank you for listening to Midnight Kentucky. We are very delighted to have a prominent member of our community here with us today who has seen and heard quite a bit around the Russell Springs area regarding the recent and historic flaps of these mystery lights that we've talked about several times on the show. Mr. Daniel Wilson, thank you for being here, sir. We deeply appreciate it.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you all here and to be able to share some of the things that I have witnessed and encountered over my life. And, I don't think I need to go to this extreme, but I would say that what I'm telling is the truth. This is, I wouldn't say this to garner attention or to try to make something out of something that's not. And so I would go on record of saying that. I think it's important that we tell the facts.
Very much so, and we're all about that. We were actually talking with Calvin Parker a few weeks ago, and he was talking about how people have really tried to embellish upon his case, and he said that's not what I'm about. I want the truth. I want to know what happened. So,
exactly right.
So we're all about that here. Tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about what you do, other than seeing these mystery lights and such.
Well, my lifestyle, I started out with EMS, working at the ambulance service back in the 80s. Went on and was able to be a deputy coroner for a long time. Went to mortuary school and a licensed funeral director and embalmer. Became interested in things that fly at night that are unexplained after an encounter when I was about 7 or 8 years old, and we'll talk about that soon. And I have the Storm Alert Weather Center that I serve mainly Russell and Adair and surrounding counties, but also venture out throughout the state of Kentucky to try to make a difference in the way of weather. And a lot of the phenomena that's in the air, I think, plays hand in hand with weather, and so it's kind of my cup of tea.
Oh yeah, and that's another reason, like we were talking about before the show. You have this, about these things. You know about the sky. You know about these sightings, this research. So you're a very good witness for you're one of those witnesses that researchers like to talk to.
Well, I like to be a credible person, and not embellish or make it worse than what it actually is.
Exactly. Well, Daniel, if you want to start us out and tell us a little bit about that initial encounter. I know we've talked about it a few times, but Just give us that story. Start us out with that sighting of that light.
All right, was probably 8-9 years old, and we came out of church one Sunday night. It was the best I recall in the summer months, and we pulled underneath the carport, and I got out of the car and walked around to the side of the house, and looking almost due, I would say southeast from where we were. This is kind of in the Dorena Community Gosser Ridge area of Russell County, and looking right at the county line, there was this large light that was seemed to be about the same height of a road sign, maybe a little higher.
Sure.
And my mom and this other preacher's wife, they saw it. My brother seen it, and we watched it for a short time, and it began to kind of move within, kind of in a circular pattern. This is hard to explain on radio.
Oh yeah,
But it kind of bounced around in a very short, a very small. Help me out with the words. Parameter.
Yeah, it almost there's a lot of reports like that. It almost bounced back and forth in place.
In place. Sure. That would be the right way to say it.
Sure.
And we watched it for a few minutes, and it went out, leaving a trail of smoke behind it. Not a lot of smoke, but it was there enough to be seen. We stayed outside for a long time to wait for it to happen again, and I've never seen anything like it since then.
Interesting. What year was this? I know we talked about that just a little bit. But.
Probably in the late 70s or maybe early 80s.
Sure. And there was a lot of activity of this type, late 70s.
And I have been in contact with different people and that have said this is probably a phenomenon called the Jacob's Lantern.
Right.
There's also some other names, but that's what best fits this event.
For sure. Jacob's Lantern, also called will-o'-the-wisp, occasionally spook lights every now and again. Goes by many names, like you said. And, it was... I did a little research initially into that whole Jacob's Lantern phenomenon after you and I talked about it. And some people down in the South associate that with, spectral, with spirits. And, of course... we tend to associate it more with UFOs, but it's interesting how that plays across all phenomena, not just with the UFOs or with spirits. You mentioned that puff of smoke. That's an interesting.
It didn't last long. There wasn't a great amount of smoke, but nonetheless, it was more of a trail, like what was left behind from it moving.
Right.
And it did seem to move toward us, but not to the point that we were being chased, or it was just coming in our direction.
Interesting.
Very slowly.
Right. So it was almost coming towards you.
Very slowly. Mm-hmm.
Now, when it faded out, did it just fade till it just wasn't there anymore, or did it just?
It just kind of disintegrated in a sense, not as an explosion, but it kind of. Just slowly, it was quick, but it just kind of fizzled out. That would be the good way of putting it.
About how long, I know you may have mentioned it, but about how long did you all watch the...
Probably a minute and a half.
So a good amount of time for something like
and
this.
And there was other people that seen it, like, that was leaving church on up the road, like where the crossroads were.
Oh, wow.
So other people had seen it as well.
That's pretty interesting. Did you get to talk to them after the fact? Or?
Most people that would see things like that are like, we saw it, we're not talking about it because we don't believe in it.
Right.
We didn't see it.
Right.
But we saw it.
Right. Oh, for sure. For sure. Not to get too philosophical, why do you think that is around here specifically?
Well, I think to a point that people have the mindset that we are the only things that can happen, that there's nothing from another power or another source,
right,
or another realm,
from anywhere else.
From anywhere.
Right.
And I think that people just want to ignore it because it happened and we're scared of it.
Oh, yes.
But, I didn't fear anything.
Right.
I'm out of a night making moon pictures and things, and the only thing I fear is some madman being in the bushes that I don't know about with the intent to hurt me, but I'm not afraid of lights and things in the sky.
Or some animal that's rabid.
Exactly.
And of course. There's much more things to be afraid of in the woods.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, for sure.
And it sure is not going to be a Jacob's Lantern.
right. I may walk up to that. I don't know if I want to walk up to some crazy guy wandering through the woods. Well, I know that you have had other experiences with these lights throughout your life. Almost was that was the initial encounter though. That was
the first time. Yeah.
And you mentioned before we went on the air that this encounter may have been what interested you in the sky in the first place.
Well, it kind of brought a new aspect of what is up there.
Right.
If you go outside and you let your eyes become adjusted to to the night lights, especially if you're in a place where there's no artificial light, you can see a lot of things in the sky, whether you want to admit it or not.
Oh, yeah.
And that piqued my curiosity of maybe is there more to it than what we're seeing.
Very much.
And when people tell me, that we saw a certain thing last night, if they're a credible person, I'm going to say, I don't doubt you one bit. I want to know more about it.
Sure.
But it gave me an incentive to learn and to appreciate the testimony of others.
Very much so. And I'm sure you agree with this too. A few weeks ago, and we talked about this a little when we met last time, we had a encounter from some people up in Tennessee that turned out very ordinarily some lettuce greenhouse lights.
Yeah.
But don't you think, and of course there were people that were calling that out and saying, oh, y'all are ignorant for doing this and for seeing this. But without those things, without establishing what the things are that we can mistake these things for, we will never know if it's something out of the ordinary.
Well, whenever I was deputy coroner, they taught us one thing in coroner school, to treat every death investigation as if it were a homicide.
Yes.
You don't go in saying that grandma was killed by the grandkids.
Right.
But you go in, you look at things, you look at this situation and think, wonder what happened.
Right.
Do they have a medical record? What's the condition of the body?
Sure.
And everything surrounding, and real quickly you'll start to eliminate. Well, this is not a homicide.
Exactly.
So you have to rule it out. And the only fool is made is if you deny the facts that are proven to you. You can say, well, your credibility goes down if you say, well, that's not possible. That can't be from.
Right.
But then when they show you the facts, they'll say this came from the lettuce factory.
Sure.
So you move on to the next thing.
Exactly. And you say, well, now we know. The next time this happens, that's what this is. And you're exactly spot on. You have to treat every case individually.
Exactly.
You have to go through those line of facts. But there's a lot of people that, just like we were talking about before, you can give them evidence. You can walk it right up to them and say, here it is. We have give me an explanation. They can't explain it. Yet they will still deny you to the very end that it's...
Well, and to a lot of people, too, they will attribute it to something that just happened. But they don't want, it was just... blah, 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 whatever.
Sure, right.
But they don't want to give credit to where credit is due.
Right. They don't want to say...
Exactly.
We can't explain it. Yeah, right. Well, I know that after these events, you've also talked with other people who have seen similar things, or people in the community who have saw similar things.
I've had the opportunity to speak with several people that have seen strange light phenomena, lights flash, going across the sky that may or may not have been meteorites, strange objects. Even my aunt reported years ago being in the Eli community, and this light hovering over the top of their car as I believe they traveled down Parks Ridge, and that's been a long time ago.
That's pretty interesting. Would you elaborate? Could you elaborate on that?
Really, I can't remember a whole lot about it. I've only heard, bits and pieces of it. Sure. But, I've heard that story for, all my life.
That is very interesting. The abductees in Stanford, they talked about that light following them. Mm-hmm. And that's not very far, that's...
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people who have untold stories that they're afraid to go on the record. And, I consider this on the record. Oh, yeah. For historical and,
Sure. Anytime you're writing it down or recording it, somebody's going to look back at that someday. Yep. Especially if something, if lights were to appear over this church tonight, people are going to dig into that, and they're going to want to know, well, what's happened before. Or any good investigator is going to want to dig in and know what's happened before. So, yeah, for sure.
But I have, I've met several people that have seen things, and some of those things were credible, and others you had to kind of weed out.
Sure.
But when people can look you in the eye and say, we saw this at a certain place and time, and this is what happened, then it's not my position to say, well, you're a liar or you didn't see it.
Right.
If I can't go into it with an open mind, then we have to just not even talk about it.
Right. And what's the point if you're not going
There's no point.
Right. If you're going into it fully to debunk something or fully to believe something, either way, you're not really doing yourself or the case justice.
Exactly.
I mean, it's just not. And we won't mention any names, of course, but how many people would you say in Russell County you spoke to that you think they've had a reliable, unexplained encounter with this type of thing?
To have seen strange objects in the sky, probably. That's kind of a quick question, but let me see. I would say probably a half dozen.
Interesting. So at least 6 people that have seen these.
5 or 6 over my lifetime.
Right.
It's not as prevalent as one might think, but I've heard of things on the lake.
Oh, yeah.
That happens frequently.
Oh, yeah.
And even as eerie as the location is, I'm surprised that we don't have orbs and some type of activity at the dam.
Yes.
Because that is a place where several people have taken their life at the rock walls. Mm-hmm. We've had people, they didn't perish in the wreck, but, like the semi that went over the dam, I was part of that recovery effort.
Oh, wow.
And I've been on the side of the dam, of the rock wall, and we worked to get those people out.
And I mean, aside from anything paranormal, that is an intense situation.
It's very much intense.
Yeah.
And being, I was the first one there that morning.
Jeez.
I'll never forget that.
You were literally the first responder.
I was the first responder to arrive on the scene that morning. And I'm thinking, how in the world we get them people out? And it was a day-long effort because we had to bring in the jaws of life from the river up to the side of the rock part of the dam,
right,
and navigate boulders. We weren't prepared for that.
No.
And then going inside the dam is like 300 steps down, and then you walk a little ways, and it's 300 back up.
Jeez.
To the outside.
So by the time you're up there, you're exhausted anyway.
So and all the things that have happened at the dam, I'm surprised we haven't had people's. Let's see, the paranormal.
Sure.
See strange lights, but I don't know of any stories of that.
But it's just like you said. I think a lot of people would be surprised to find out how many people have seen things like that. But like you said, just
their mom.
Exactly.
Their mom about it.
Exactly. Let's get into some of these other things that you've seen over. I know that this was your initial encounter. When would you say your next encounter was something like this?
Well, I've had. I guess there's been other lights that I've seen in the sky. One was I can't remember if it was a meteorite or whatever, but myself and the former police chief in Jamestown were interviewed by a radio station in Texas. Because of light that was seen in the sky, and I was on Main Street in Russell Springs, right at about the Star Theater when it went over. and was able to witness that. I don't recall how that they pinpointed Russell Springs, Kentucky, but it was they called us, and somehow I got made contact.
Sure.
They made contact with us, and I was live on the morning radio.
So somehow they had tracked back where it had went over, and they had established.
Must have, yes. And then there's been other types, like in past, and even like in more recently, out making moon pictures, where you see a streak of light, that goes to the sky, and you're thinking, what was that?
Right.
Or you look up high into the heavens, which it may have been some kind of shooting star that would even make, a right to left, left to right move, and then it's gone.
Right.
I have seen where you track if you put your camera on like the extended exposure, and you'll see the airplanes go across, and it almost looks like stitching across the sky.
Interesting.
It's just like a light. You'll see it. It's timed perfectly.
Right.
And then you see those. You think, I don't remember an airplane there, and it's just a straight mark.
Almost like, I think we compared it to this last week. Almost like the rods.
Like a rod.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I have several of those. I can't remember when and where.
Sure.
But I do remember back several years ago having the camera on my radio tower, communications tower.
Yeah.
And was looking back toward Kmart and I guess the northwest part of town. And to make a long story short, I'm looking at the monitor, and there's it looks like the clouds are lit up, just like in an elongated pattern. Mm-hmm. Thinking, what is that? So I go back to what I'm doing and look at it again, and it's moved. I'm thinking, this is weird.
Right.
So I let a little time pass, and I play it back and speed up the playback. And here's this long light. I would say probably 500 feet, maybe longer, or 1,000 feet, between 500 to 800 feet, and it goes from left to right, right to left, left to right, and then it goes on out of sight. So I document this and put it on YouTube. I share it with the National Weather Service and WBKO television, and within 2 weeks it had been removed from YouTube.
Wow. Any word back from WBKO?
No. Or? Nobody responded back. Nobody wanted to talk about it.
That's interesting.
I mean, that is the truth.
That's very interesting. About how long would you say that this thing moved back and forth?
I would say probably a half an hour.
Wow, that's a pretty good amount of time for this type of video.
But the thing of it is, if you didn't have the vantage point that I had,
right,
from the screen, and you watch it, it's going by so slow, you would never detect it.
Right. So it just basically moved right to left. Mm-hmm. What did it just fade, or did it?
No, it maintained the same. Of course, it was a cloudy night.
Sure.
And it maintained the same height, same size, the same presence. But it was it changed a little bit due to the clouds. The way it looked exactly.
Sure, yeah.
But for the most part, it stayed the same all the way through.
I know we had talked a little last week about a theory that you had, which is pretty well established, about maybe these things using certain weather phenomena to hide. Is that, would you say that this was one of those instances where this thing may have been using those clouds to keep its presence, undetected? Or
Well, of course, we can speculate a lot on what we think it is.
Sure.
And I'm not far from you on that. But it makes me think about this other event that happened that I encountered back in June of this year.
Yes, and we actually documented this on our website, talked a little bit about it on our episode UFOs over Central Kentucky a while back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And this, but to answer your question about the latter, I believe that there are things out there that somebody doesn't want us to know about.
Sure.
They're hiding behind clouds. They're doing things that are, in my opinion, could be intrusive. Mm-hmm. That is that compromises the privacies that we should be afforded.
Very much.
And to what extreme that they're doing, I don't know.
Right.
But there's something out there because I have seen it. And, the light that went from left to right in town, I don't know what they never really, to my knowledge, got far enough below the clouds to do anything. But who's to say that they didn't?
Sure.
And what in the world would it be that's 500 feet long or 1,000 feet long tracking through the air?
Exactly. And that's what I was about to say.
And what business does it have up there,
Right. And that's what I was about to say. That is an enormous object. Mm-hmm. I mean, that is huge. 500 to 1,000 feet. That's massive.
Now, let me reiterate something, or I guess explain this again. Mm-hmm. I did notice from the ground up that there was no lights that were causing that to happen.
Couldn't have been a lettuce greenhouse. Right.
It was not anything like a lettuce greenhouse.
Or any spotlight or anything like that.
I made sure that there was, because it had a trajectory of, left to right, right to left, left to right, and it was gone. Right. And all that happened over probably a 25 to 30 minute time period.
And that's a good amount of time. I mean, to document something for that amount of time.
And why was it taken off of YouTube?
Right.
That's a good question. I kind of wonder what I don't know anything about our local airport, but does it have a radar system or anything of that nature that would pick something like this up?
No, I don't think they have radar at all.
Right. They're private planes.
Yeah, they just mainly have a...
But you saw something very similar to this when you were a kid, right?
Yeah,
over Arby's.
Yeah, over towards Arby's. But it was kind of like around sunset.
Right.
It wasn't at night, and it was similar. But I kind of wonder, if something that big, and of course it hanging off YouTube definitely raises questions of, who knows about this and why are they keeping it hid from the public.
Right.
And of course, this takes us back to, like I started to talk earlier, about the June the 18th at 11:18 in the night. I was traveling back from Somerset, and it's what now the Eli exit on the Parkway.
Yeah.
But at that point, it was the construction zone, and it caught my attention enough that I went between two barrels to pull off the road to see what in the world that was.
So you actually got out and looked at this thing, or stopped?
Well, I stopped, and the reason I stopped, as I was traveling down the road, I noticed in my windshield, just below the rearview mirror, if you would hold your hand up in the air, and your fist up in front of you,
sure,
there was a spot of red, yellow-green pigment in the clouds, which was low-lying clouds, fog clouds,
right.
All over.
Right.
And I'm thinking, what in the world is this? And being, a moon photographer, I keep up with the phases of the moon.
Sure.
And I thought for a second, crescent moon, but no, it's not a crescent moon because you don't have them that late of a night. So I'm watching this. These clouds lit up, and then all of a sudden, this yellow greenish object comes down from the sky.
Jeez.
And that's documented by, it's just been reported to 911 in Russell County. Someone in Taylor County saw it. And that, I think someone submitted that picture.
Yes, the picture that you posted on the storm alert.
That's right.
Was the photo that
was the photo they took.
Right.
And it was everything that I seen.
Right.
And it lasted probably a minute. And somebody said, "Well, why didn't you get a picture?" I was, you can't. You don't want to miss everything.
Exactly.
Fumbling for your phone.
Exactly. And how many stories have you heard of people trying to take photos of this thing and they'll turn to get their camera and then they look back and it's gone?
It's gone.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So this actual object was reported through 911.
Through 911 and other. And I'm trying to think of what Bill Kidd is the man's name.
Mufon.
I was trying to think of that.
Yeah.
And Bill, he actually reached out to me for some more information about it.
Awesome. So do you have a Mufon case report by chance?
Yes, there is one on file.
Really? Okay,
yes.
Cool. We'll have to look in.
We'll look it on
He's aware of that. And he attributed some of the other calls and gave me some information about it.
Interesting.
So he has more details about it.
Bill, he's another one of these guys that we know very loosely, but he seems to be a pretty good researcher. I mean, he seems to very thoroughly look into his stuff and track it back. When he was doing this research on this particular thing, were these other sightings? Did they line up with your sighting of it? Were they in the same time? Were they?
Everything correlated together.
Right.
The timelines, the description, the location, it all matched up.
Right.
And then I guess you could say substantiated. Everything was substantiated.
Right.
You don't have people calling 911 every day to say,
sure,
there's an odd yellow greenish light in the sky.
Right. And that's another thing about these things. A lot of people say, well, these people want attention or these people are hoaxing these things. But why would you? I mean, why?
Well, I mean, if you think about what was seen and what was done, you're not going to be able to create something like that in your backyard.
Right. It's not something you're just going to be able to build and send up.
No.
Right.
I mean, the technology's there, but the expense would be enormous to try to say we're going to put something up in the air that's going to be seen for 50 miles.
Sure. Exactly. And that would be about the range that these people, and if you're seeing it, people in Taylor County are seeing it, that would be about that range, about 50 miles.
I think right on the Taylor airline on 55.
Okay, wow. So, I mean, it's
still,
Yeah.
And keep in mind, too, that was a cloudy night.
Right. Yeah.
Visibility, less than 1/8 of a mile, I'd say.
Which goes back to that cloud thing that we were talking about. It seems like, what if this is an intelligence, they understand we can use these things to shield ourselves, or maybe even make these things to shield ourselves.
Well, what if we go out on the limb to say, number one, I'll give this scenario. If the light that I saw in Russell Springs that went left to right to left, if that was taken off of YouTube, that was taken off by some of our own.
Right.
And if it was if this is another life form, another world, so to speak, that's doing it, they're not going to have that access to do.
Sure.
To proof and to blot out what they don't want people to know.
Right.
So it's either one or the other.
And I know, of course, we're speculating. Anything besides what we saw, it's speculation. But why do you think somebody would do that? Why do you think somebody would whitewash that off YouTube?
I think that there's a lot of intelligent people there. And there's people out there that could look at what I seen and what other people saw, and they know exactly what it is.
Right.
And if the right person has an encounter with such a light, then they're going to going to potentially blow cover for something that,
Sure.
that somebody or a group of people didn't want blown.
Sure. A credible witness. Somebody that has training about the sky and about, very much so. And, more and more we hear about military witnesses and police witnesses. And, I mean...
Area 51.
Exactly. I mean, we're hearing about people that are extremely credible that have seen these things. I mean, people that, it's not the stereotype, and I'm not sure it ever was, but it's not the stereotypical, person in the middle.
Exactly.
It's not that. I don't really think it ever was that. From my research, it seems like it's always been very credible witnesses saying something's going on.
Well, and something too, you think about the people who discount. You think about the people that discount these sightings. A lot of those people are influential people that are credible in other ways, but
Right.
they don't want to go out and step outside the box and say, this happened.
Right, very much so, very, very much so. It may disagree with an inherited belief that they have,
exactly,
and they don't want to mess with that.
I think there are things out there that's doing weird stuff, and it's it's your guys' position to, I guess, to bring it more light to it, and to establish a fact that I'm not going to say that there's not green men inside these things, but it's obvious that it's out there because I've seen it.
Right.
Other people have, and I think that we need to educate the people that it's okay to see things like this. It's okay to tell your friends and family, and it's okay to come forward and say, look, I seen this freakish looking light last night right over the top of our barn.
Exactly. And it's okay to say, hey, we saw something, or I saw something, and I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
All I did was see it. I can't tell you that this is what it is. We can speculate, of course. That's what that's what we do. But really, when it comes down to it, we don't know what these things are. We don't know what they're doing, and we don't know. And I think a lot of people have trouble in general saying, I don't know what that was. Everybody wants to put things in a box and say, we know what that is. And I think a lot of people have a lot of trouble saying, well, I don't know, but I saw it.
Well, you talk about things are unexplained and you don't know what they are. We were called and reminded of Highway 837 over in Walltown.
Yes.
We have to talk about that.
Very much so. I was actually going to bring that up. I'm glad that you did. Go ahead and tell us just a little bit about that.
Probably after the summer sighting of the red or the yellow and green light, that has it's piqued my curiosity about what is happening in that general area, and that would include 837, the Mintonville area, along Highway 910, the Irvin Store community in that area. I have seen additional lights that were not as significant, and some of them may have been a jet or an airplane. So that's why that I kind of played low key on that.
Right.
But at the same time, I have seen groups of small lights that were working together, not in an airplane pattern.
Right.
And they would just kind of dance around in the air. And these were low hanging,
very low
aircraft. It wasn't jets or meteorites or falling stars. A friend of mine who lives in Walltown has told me that they appear to be drones. They could be, but they were running like 10 and 15 at a time.
Sure.
In the same pattern, they would rise together, depart together, and kind of spread out, and then come back later.
Right.
And something is going on.
Very much so. And as far as that drone thing goes, I write an article sometimes weekly, depending on if I can get it in weekly. But I actually covered these drones that have been seen in Russell Springs, and I actually mentioned that Casey County sighting just briefly, just to skim over. And, of course, these drones, I don't want to jump to a paranormal thing or a paranormal explanation, but it's very odd that we're getting reports of 15 of these things at a time moving in the same pattern, huge drones even, there's something weird going on with that.
Well, my cousin who has his drone license, and he does a lot of photography in southern Ohio and northern Kentucky, and even came down to our family farm and did some work, to show. And the drone was actually out of sight for the most part, and you could get crystal clear pictures from of what was going on the ground, and that drone was very expensive,
right.
So you're looking probably at $25,000, maybe $30,000 at one pop,
exactly,
flying around in the air in
the middle of Casey County in the middle of the night.
And it's not. This is not something that you see like once every day or two. It's practically every night.
Yes, very much.
Actually,
there at the late summer of this year, and of course, where I live is right there on 910. It's right, be in Casey County in 5 minutes. Late summer there, when I actually, really got interested in this drone subject and really started digging into it, we were seeing them across the road. We were seeing them hovering over our field. They were everywhere. I mean, they were everywhere. And it, like you said, it was almost every night. And Bridget even saw one, didn't she?
Yeah, my wife Bridget has seen them out that way. And sometimes we'll see them out, not really where we live on Paddy Ridge off of 127, but we'll see them kind of at the east. If you look east in the eastern sky, we'll see them in the distance.
And I'm not trying to incite violence or do anything illegal, but from my understanding, it is illegal to shoot a drone out of the sky.
Yeah.
So if anybody has an idea of that, then they better think twice.
Oh, I'll be honest with you, I was sitting there and I had my gun on my side and I was like, I could probably hit that thing. But, of course, I backed off. I was like, I better not shoot it.
The thing, like with my cousin's drone, I don't know about nighttime pictures, but, you take a drone up that high with the technology, they could probably see you pull your gun.
Easily.
And say, well, we're a threat.
Right.
My friend, they actually shined a spotlight toward one, and this was back maybe a couple months ago. Shined a spotlight toward one, and the drone interacted with the light.
Wow!
I think I forgot to mention that to you.
That's
insane.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. And this was one of these drones that they unknown origin.
Yes, the group of 8 or 10 or 15 or so.
That's almost mind-boggling. I mean, so again, speculating. What are these drones? Where are they coming from? Why are they here?
Well, I think that's the $1 million question.
Amen. Yeah.
And if we had the right kind of staff, and you can't. They have to land somewhere.
Sure.
And if you're close enough to see them come up, then you know where they're coming from.
Right.
The question is, are we ready? Are we prepared to see where they're coming from?
Right.
And to see what they're really up to.
Right. Do we want to know what's behind these drones?
Do we want to know what's behind it?
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. When, of course, these drones that they're seeing are not these $200 drones you can buy from Walmart. These are nice.
These are big outfits.
When I did the article, I called Sheriff's Department, I called City Police, and I called State Police just to see, because at the time it was right around when they would have been doing drug raids and drug stuff like that. Across the board, they said we do not use drones. We use helicopters or we use manned,
Okay, so now that you mention that, if you think about it, do you need 10 or 15 up at the same place?
Right, and that's exactly.
And why do you bring it up all the time?
Right. You'd think that if somebody were growing drugs out there, they'd be like, well, there's drones flying everywhere. Let's move our stuff. You know?
Now, I'm not familiar with the operation of a drone. I know the general principle.
Sure.
But do they have steady lights on them?
I'm honestly not sure.
Not to the point of being a bright light, but just kind of like a clearance light. Just something to say, "Hey,
I'm here."
I'm here.
Right. Yeah. And if they do, you would think that they would have to. Everything in the air has to, right?
I don't know.
According to the FFA, I think you do. Because there's regulations of flying these drones around aircraft because they could, cause a collision in midair, and you have to follow certain, regulations.
You can only get so far in the air.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And as far as flying them in a sequence, that's to me that's somewhat maybe breaking the rules and especially with the lights on them like that.
And how would you? You'd have to be an awfully good pilot to fly 15 of these things at the same time in these maneuvers.
And a group of people.
Right, exactly. And why rural Casey County? Why rural Kentucky? Why rural Kentucky for any of this, but why us?
Maybe, of course, my friend lives in the Walltown community of Casey County. That's just back to the side of Science Hill, in that general area.
Sure.
And, the only thing I can think of is to pre-track the roads and put a grid on this situation, and through the process of elimination, find out where these things are coming from and where they're going.
That's actually brilliant.
Yeah.
And there's nothing anybody can say if if you see the drones, say, well, where do you think they're coming from?
Right.
If you're standing there in this person's house, you'll say, well, here's 837, and it looks like it's coming from this place.
Right.
And then you go and you hang around a certain area on a clear night, which apparently that's the big. And then if you think, well, it's between there and back on 837, then you don't need to go toward Taylor County.
Exactly. Well, you can pinpoint that there's something in here where they're coming.
Process of elimination.
Sure. It almost, to me, and this is major speculation, but when I was doing, my initial research on it, I couldn't shake the fact that these drones sound like black helicopters, like we used to see in the 90s. And of course, people still see black helicopters, but that was a prevalent thing back in the late 90s, was the black helicopters. Mm-hmm. They would follow UFOs. They would be seen around UFOs. And of course, none of these drones have been, directly in the sight of one of these mystery lights or one of these UFOs. But it's very odd that they're in this exact same area. Mm-hmm. They are right there.
Well, there's something that's that I think about too, and I'm not sure if you all are aware of this. And I wrote this down in case that I forget to mention it.
I understand.
But we're talking about these unexplained aircraft that's going through. There's also been reports in the United States of these cell phone towers that's going up. And if you look at them with the binoculars, there's no equipment on them. There's no heavy coax coming down from them, and it would be something totally different. They're not registered as a cell phone tower, or they have no microwave dishes on them.
Interesting.
And it's kind of a weak loaded tower that who knows what's going on. I don't know if you're aware of that. I know that's clearly out of the
blue. Have you heard of this?
I have not heard of this, but that's interesting. There's no coax going to the antenna.
Not like it would be to run, a cell phone or a TV or a radio station.
Anything that would be normal for this radio tower to be doing. No, I had not heard of this. That's very interesting. That's your jam, man.
You better try to work on that.
I can't dig into that. That's right down my alley.
So where are there any around our area that this is happening at?
I can't remember exactly, but I'm thinking between like E-Town and Louisville.
Uh-huh.
I'm not sure, but
Right.
but I believe that's true.
That is,
as far as Kentucky goes.
Yeah, we definitely need to do some research into this. Just speculating, what would be your speculation for these towers?
Well, with having a camera up, 60 feet in the air, you can see a lot. More than what you would think. But if you have a tower that's 300 feet and that can zoom in with the technology we have today, who's to say there's, a very sophisticated camera system there.
Sure.
Watching.
That is a very good point.
And then the reason I mention this is this all part of the infrastructure of a total of an invasion of the privacy of the American people.
Yes, very much so. Very much so. And it's interesting. I don't know if you've done much research into Tom DeLonge's whole thing. His what is the name of that?
Oh, the unacknowledged disclosure.
His To the Stars Academy.
Yeah.
He supposedly is working along with these Nimitz guys who saw the Tic Tac UFO over. But initially, when all of this came out, he was talking about how his company was going to build a detection system to detect when these things showed up, these anomalies, these UFOs, these light anomalies. A camera 300 feet in the air would be a great way to see one of these things come across, and a great way to keep tabs on people, and a great way to watch people, and a great way to know what's happening.
Well, I follow a meteorologist down in Alabama, down in Birmingham, James Spann, and he's credible, and they're always seeing balls of fire in Alabama. It seems like maybe once a month did anybody see the fireball at 718.
Right.
And I can't tell you the last time we saw anything like that here.
Very much. Right.
And even, I don't know if this has anything to do with it, but they'll say, well, tonight we'll have a certain kind of meteor shower or whatever. And then you go outside, and I've waited for hours and never see anything.
Right.
But then you talk to people elsewhere, and they'll say, boy, wasn't it beautiful? I bet I saw 100 an hour.
Sure, yeah.
And then you sit out for 2 or 3 hours and never see a thing.
So you think that may be a way of saying, this is what this is, but...
Exactly.
Right. A pre-explanation almost.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's a, yeah.
Interesting, because if it was an actual meteor shower, you think, since we're looking at the same sky, you would be able to see that, since that's in outer space and not in your localized area as far as flying.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. Very much so.
But my first cousin, I got her interested in moon shooting after I got a camera to shoot, moon pictures and things. And she got her camera, and we had about... it was about half of a moon, and so she was excited, and she zoomed in and got a really nice picture. And she lives in Greenfield, Indiana, and you would think that based on where the moon is and where she was and where I am, there would be a variation in the moon.
Sure,
but there's not. Whenever she shot the moon, her moon picture was identical to mine as far as the, what craters were visible, despite 235 miles away.
that is very interesting. And speculating, what would you say the reason for that would be?
I have no answer for that.
That is very interesting.
I mean, it's just a fact at the height,
Right.
and we're seeing. I guess it just goes to show how small insignificant we are.
Right, exactly. I mean, and that kind of goes to this whole thing, talking about these things that are hovering over us and coming down and looking at us. In a lot of ways, it's like how we observe ants or observe, things that, looking at us, they would have no idea what we are. I mean, it would be inconceivable to them that we exist. Maybe that's the same thing that's happening here. Maybe it's inconceivable to us what these things exactly are.
and it's it's untelling what it is.
Sure.
And it may be something that we don't want to feel threatened. I mean, I'm not afraid to investigate.
Right.
But are we willing to pay that price?
Sure.
It's kind of like the Wizard of Oz. Are we willing to pull back the curtain, and see, who is the puppeteer?
Right. Who the wizard really is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because if we look at it that way, it may be something that's a friend, it may be a foe, it may be something that you survive today, but then it may be something we live with the rest of our life.
Sure. Very much so.
And I think that we have to be careful investigating, but as someone that's interested, like you all are, inquiring minds want to know. But curiosity killed a cat.
Amen.
But we live in a time when there's nothing sacred any longer. Everything is kind of just out there, and we have to it's our job as an American citizen to make sure that what we are entitled to, and we're talking more rights. I don't like to discuss politics.
Sure, no, I understand completely.
But we have a right to privacy.
Yes, totally.
And if people are flying over our homes, looking into our windows,
or if anything is right,
then we have a right to know that,
and we have a right to ask questions about that.
Ask questions, and and take action if it comes to us to that point.
Exactly.
Because the thing is, I know this was photography well enough. Light will basically ruin a camera.
Mm-hmm.
So if it may be crazy, but if a person could find out that they're making pictures, ruin their picture. You don't have to shoot the drone.
Almost like the LEDs that you wear on your hat to mess up those. Yeah, very much. Yeah. Well, I know that messaging back and forth, we had briefly discussed, and I'm pretty sure all three of us in this room definitely agree with this, but there is something going on at that 910 corridor right there. There's sightings constantly. Mm-hmm. There's something happening there. And I'm not sure what that is. I can't even really speculate. Do you have any speculation on what exactly is happening there?
One of the insignificant things that I saw back a couple of weeks ago, there was some kind of aircraft that was traveling, I would say more like south, or traveling northeast.
Right.
And it was kind of going at an angle, and then it stopped. And most of the time, you don't stop an aircraft on a dime and to go back another direction. You go into a bank.
It seems like it would be very hard to do as well. Yeah.
So, as I can, I draw it out on paper, it's like I'm looking at it on my left side, and then it's kind of making a kind of like a curve, a half hook, kind of like a crescent moon in a way, and then it goes out, and then it immediately starts to come back this way. Yes. And it was just a solid light. It wasn't a flashing beacon like an aircraft, like an airplane or a jet or a helicopter.
Like what's on the bottom of an aircraft, sure.
Yeah.
And this was right there.
Probably right in that area.
Right. It's just, and like we were talking online, it seems like these things are rising in frequency. It seems like more and more people are paying attention, or they're showing up more. Within the last few weeks, we've got at least, just off the top of my head, we've got at least 2 new photos of something that's out there.
Well, the thing is, like, for myself, I watch the sky, driving down the road. I have, I keep my eye ahead of what's going on and thinking, well, what is this happening? And I'm prepared to take an account of of what's going on.
Right.
But then I don't know if it's the frequency, or maybe people are becoming braver at reporting. But there again, we have like a public service. I don't want to. Well, he put it on Facebook, like here in Russell Springs. The strange lights over Royville.
Sure.
And he went into detail about how it looked.
Right.
It's not an airplane.
It's right. Definitely not an airplane.
But when the weather gets better, there's a lot of opportunities and places to go within that 910 corridor. Between the roads or wherever, that a person could watch for a long time.
Right. And
it's it'd be safe. You don't want to pull off and
sure
and get hit. But there's a lot of spots there to watch, and I think when the weather clears, gets better, that there needs to be we need to camp out up there.
Oh yeah, and we would love to be a part of that. We have talked about that corridor for a long time.
Yeah,
I mean,
for many years.
What do you think? What do you think the timeline is? Not to set a date and a time to go look, but do you think it's? I'm finding more after 10, 11 o'clock at night is when things start to happen.
There's an old wives' tale, an old myth, an old legend, whatever, called the witching hour, which is from midnight to 4 a.m. And of course, in these old legends, they talk about this time being the time when the veil or whatever is between this world and the next is at its thinnest. And it definitely seems like hitting around 10, 11, on into midnight, 1, 2, 3, 4, definitely seems like that's when you can go out and see something.
And I'm not sure if this is biblical or just an old saying that the darkest hour is just before dawn.
Yes, very much so.
And it's, I've been out a lot, in the nighttime, and it seems like that you feel a presence that you do not feel of a daytime.
Yes.
It's not a presence of fear, but it's almost like an apprehensive, like,
I mean, it can almost come on you all at once.
Comes like, is something or somebody behind or above me that I can't see.
Right.
And usually, for the sake of wild animals or someone, if I'm making, pictures of the moon or I'm not sure if you saw the pictures of the rock house that was from the other side.
Yeah, that was awesome. Yeah.
And that turned out well. Well, you have to think, I want to shoot those pictures with my vehicle, behind me.
Right.
Not that you're afraid, but I've got it set up that way.
Sure.
And because you can't help but think, this is
right.
And you feel things like I had an encounter with my photography encounter with my cousin from Indiana. She came and wanted a certain type of picture from the cemetery where her mom and dad were buried.
Sure.
And we went out there, and most people would have been like, there is no way I'm going to trample on these graves at midnight.
Right.
And we were there for like 2 a.m. making pictures, and everything was, we didn't see anything.
Right.
I was up in that cemetery as if it were daytime.
Sure, yeah.
But then there's other places I've been to that I'm like, what am I doing here?
Oh, yeah. And isn't it weird how you can go into a cemetery at night, because I've done very similar, and you don't get those vibes. Like, I don't think I have ever been in a cemetery at night that I've got that vibe of, we need to leave. But I have certainly been to some places around here in the middle of nowhere where I've felt something is out. And for me, and I'm sure for you and any outdoors person, animals are definitely, an animal could get you, a bear, a rabid coyote, anything like that. But with that, it's almost like, well, we have firearms. I'm not particularly, even if I see something like that, I'm like, I could shoot it. I could bring it down. It's not that type of fear. It's a different type of fear. It's a different type of. It's almost like you don't know what's looking at you.
Well, and it's almost like you're not sure if the protections you carry is going to be able to end the threat.
Exactly. You don't know if your handgun or your rifle or whatever, you don't know what's going to happen if you... Right, exactly.
And most of the time, if I'm out like that, I take, I have a gun plus an extra magazine.
Sure, yes.
I'm just like, if you have a big animal or something, 6 may not take you out.
Exactly. You're a man after my own heart, Dad.
Yeah.
I carry an extra mag with me all... Because you're exactly right. And in that moment, regardless of how good a marksman you are, you could spend 6 shots just firing. You need an... it's always better to have
and
it.
6 of them may not hit.
Right, exactly.
Maybe a pop gun.
You are exactly right. Well, and again, speculating here, and I may have glazed over this question before, but what would be your best guess that people are seeing here?
What would be my best guess of what we're seeing?
What do you think these mystery lights are?
Well, it's definitely something that would require an investigation.
For sure.
Personally, I don't know.
Right.
If I knew the answer, then we wouldn't be here today.
Sure, we wouldn't be talking about it. Right.
But at the same time, it's I'm inquisitive about it and willing to take that step to answer your question.
Very much
because
so.
we are in a realm area of the unknown happening. People are seeing things that we've never seen before.
Right.
And whether it be of another world, of the American man, whether it be our government, that's one thing. And it may be, if you look at it from a different standpoint, it may be God trying to tell us something on the other side.
Yes, and I thought that.
I don't know, because we have to deal with people who maybe have faith and belief in God, and some that don't. But that's all out of the process of elimination.
Sure.
If you can't, I don't think that God is going to come up in the form of a drone or a mini helicopter, but some of the high altitude things that we're seeing, we could attribute that to Him.
Very much so.
But the lower things, I believe it's something of man-made proportion, and I think that it, in some cases, is an intrusive element of our society that has to be dealt with.
Very much so.
And I think too that we are complacent to the fact that things happen. It's like with weather. I have preached and preached and preached. We live in a spot where the weather radar is useless for us. That is totally another topic.
Right. Well, actually, we were talking about this just the other day.
This is totally another topic. We're in a place where radar is useless. We have become complacent to think that the outdoor warning sirens is the cat's meow.
Right.
And I'm like, this is World War II technology that we're dealing with. We have become complacent that a tornado is not going to hit us. Well, we're complacent too to think, well, these bright lights and things that we see in other countries and other towns and counties and states, they happen there and they don't happen here.
Right.
Well, we need to get out of that mindset. They are here. They are impacting us, and they're changing lives.
Very much
and
so.
we have to take that step to do something a little bit farther, because our county, state, local governments, they're cash strapped. They're not going to investigate this,
and they don't want to. It doesn't seem like
they don't want to, and they don't want us to. Don't be surprised if we ever arrange a professional meeting or an official meeting to say, hey, we're going to 910 today. We're going there at 12 o'clock, and if our visits there become frequent and people learn about that, there will be somebody step up and say, you can't be here anymore.
Sure. Sure.
And if you go on, you go on private property, which, if you ask somebody, can we go and just sit there and watch the sky?
Look, yeah.
90% of the people say you're welcome to.
Sure.
But even then, somebody is going to say you're causing a ruckus. If you're doing something that's going to infringe on
those, very much so. Let me ask you: have you ever had that happen to you?
To be ran off from a place? No, I never have.
Right. Well, it's interesting that you bring that up. And this, I don't know. There was a very, very famous investigator named John Keel who worked on the Mothman phenomenon, all that. He said specifically, he had a man tell him, well, no, he said it, but, he collected all these other cases. He said, if you have children or you have teenagers, stay out of this. Which has always kind of freaked me out. Of course, I'm not, and I've raised my children to ask questions. But that alone is a very terrifying thing,
So he's saying, don't have your kids involved in what we're doing now,
right? Or don't even do it. Like if you have children, this is not the place for you. And that that is almost saying they will be used as leverage. And that's what I took from it. And that goes to exactly what you said. I mean, there are people out there that do not want you to talk about these things, or it seems like there are people out there that do not want you to talk about these things, and they will use those things in your life, the things that are important to you, to say, stop talking about it.
Exactly.
Right. So I don't know. It's I don't think I will ever stop asking questions. I don't think I'll ever stop wondering about these things. Just like you said, inquisitive minds want to know. We want to know what these things are.
Well, I will turn the table on you for a moment.
Go right ahead.
And I'll be the reporter and you can be the one being interviewed. So are you willing to take that extra step to go with that uncharted ground and to put yourself front and foremost, even at the happenings on 837 at Walltown and Mintonville? Are you willing to sacrifice whatever? We don't know what that sacrifice is.
Sure.
To go out and to seek and to find where this is coming from and where they're going.
I'll let you cover that first.
Absolutely. I'd love to do that.
So are you willing to sacrifice?
Yeah, I think sacrifice comes to a limit. If, like, the government comes to my house and, threatens my life and my family, there's probably, some thoughts there, some, I have to take back. But, I'm willing to take it up to that point, yes.
I think, and I don't know, I may be pushing this line a little too much, but if anything ever were to happen to me in this line of work, and I mean me specifically, sacrifice, I think I would want my son to grow up and say, hey, my dad pushed as far as he could to get these answers, and they killed him for it. Or, they came and told him to shut up, and he wouldn't shut up, and then they killed him for it, That's, and that's not an ego thing for me. A lot of people would say that, and it would be, I just want to be, but like you said, these answers are answers that we have needed for a long, 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 long time. And until somebody does step up, and there have been men who have stepped up. Art Bell, for instance. I think Art Bell was a major person who stepped up and said, I want answers. And, he was willing to listen to everybody and talk with everybody. But I'm not so sure that Art Bell died of natural causes. I don't know. The radio announcer, Bill Cooper.
Yeah,
Bill Cooper. Another one. I think Bill Cooper stepped up and said, we need answers. And, of course, the IRS kicked in his door and shot him to death. I sitting here with you now, I would say I'm willing to make sacrifices. When I get that Glock shoved in my face and told to shut up or smacked with it, I don't know. That's a different issue.
Well, I mean, if you find a place like a public spot,
sure,
when you're on the highway and you're observing or whatever, there's not anything really people can do.
Right.
If you're not a danger to other people or yourself, and then two, those powers that are watching, if they are
exactly, and that's a risk too. You don't want to get too paranoid and think that you're being watched constantly, but you don't want to be not paranoid at all when something happens.
You can find out. I have this isn't the camera, but I have another camera that I do moon pictures with, and with the right kind of accessory lighting, we can light them up.
Sure. Right.
And and make a picture where you may regret it. But I'm game.
Very much so. Very much so. I feel like both of us, we've been in some situations just this past week where we thought,
we don't want to back up at this week.
Yeah, we've saw some black SUVs around, and but again, could all contribute to that paranoia.
Went to some places we probably should.
Right. But, could all be us being paranoid. And, you get to that place when you're doing this type of work. You get to that place, and that's why I think we work so well together, because we could look at each other and we could be like, dude, are we losing our minds right now? Are we getting too paranoid? Are we spacing ourselves out? And that's important. It's important to have people around you that you can be like, okay, these things are starting to click. Are they clicking for you, or is this just me? And that's an important part of it.
Well, this is kind of off record just a little bit, or off topic, I would say. I'm thinking a few times I've seen like President Trump come to a place and the security people, like I'd rather watch them to see how they maneuver, and that's worth a whole lot.
We are the same way.
It's
yes.
like here they are, and they've got all this stuff going on, in their mind. But then, have you ever noticed the size of the doors on the limousines, and the fact that the Secret Service will always remain, even with the like if you open the door, they will stand to where you can't see what's like the threshold or the locking mechanism. All of that is hid. You can't see a thing.
Right.
And if you look at like a side shot of those vehicles, it's not a pretty smooth surface like you would see. It's shiny. But once you get up to it, you're thinking this looks like it's been through a hailstorm.
Yep.
And you're thinking, I wonder what's going on inside that car.
Right. What exactly are they doing inside that vehicle?
Yeah. And my brother actually was he's fish and wildlife officer and was able to go on Air Force 2.
Oh wow.
And he said that this was the same as Air Force 1.
Right.
Anything that can be done on the ground can be done in the sky.
Can be done in the air.
And they made him take off all recording equipment and weapons and ammunition and everything to go inside.
Just to get on.
They wouldn't let him have any.
Oh, sure. Sure. Well, we went and saw Jimmy Carter speak in, where is Jimmy Carter from? He's a Sunday school teacher.
He's down in Georgia.
Georgia. We actually went to his church where he does Sunday school. And, man, Secret Service presence there was insane. Like, it was tight. I mean,
really?
They patted you down. They run the ones over you. And this was to walk into church, It was insane. And this man has not been president for what, 40 years, something like that?
Several decades.
Yeah, I mean, so they continue that. That's continued. That's not just you have a very good point. No, we're exactly the same way. We always, or I know T's the same way. We always tend to watch the security more than just because it's interesting to see how they work and to see how they, very much so.
We was in D.C. several years ago when President Obama flew in and he landed on the South Lawn with the helicopter. And before it happened, of course, someone on the street told us we was getting ready to leave, and someone said, "Hey, the president's getting ready to fly in. You want to stick around?" And all this security was on the roofs with their guns, and you could just look around, and they were stationed all over like the perimeter, and even in the crowd, they was like mixed into the crowd. And the way the helicopters flew in, they flew like a couple, I guess scout ones in first, and then the main one come in and landed, and it was all so quick. And it was interesting. I was watching that more than I was watching the president. I was watching all the security people on the roof and just watching them, talking on the radios and stuff. And it was interesting.
Yeah. That is crazy.
It is. It's insane. Well, Daniel, it's been great talking with you. I know that you have some other experiences other than these mystery lights. Definitely want to get to those eventually. Would you be interested in coming back and speaking with us?
That'd be fine.
Great.
I would like to do that. Probably, another day to kind of break the topic.
For sure. But I know that some of those other things that have happened to you, these mystery lights almost kind of play into that somewhat.
Well, I think in order to see these things and to have things happen, you have to have an open mind and be open to everything.
Right.
The people may think you need to be institutionalized when you say that. I believe in ghosts.
Sure.
I believe in things that are that you're foretold of things happening.
Sure.
Premonitions. I'm a witness, a testimony to that.
Sure, you've seen these things.
I've seen these things.
Right.
And whenever we have the time to get together and do that,
would love to.
Be happy to
Let me ask you
it.
very quickly, and this is semi-off subject, but it's something that kind of plays into it. Do you think, of course, in addition to these mystery lights, we have a lot of Sasquatch sightings around here. Do you think that those might play into each other? Do you think that those might have something to do with one another? It's interesting to me that, we have these mystery lights and then we have these big hairy hominids on the ground and they're all in the same area.
I think it's all about the process of elimination. You can't say, you can't look at a ball and say, well, it's full of helium, it's full of rocks, it's full of, you have to open it up and see, and you have to investigate. And if we can't have an open mind to say, well, let's rule out, and yes, it may be, and it may not be.
Right.
But
it could be a coincidence there.
Could be a coincidence, right. But I think I can't deny them.
Sure.
But, I'm willing to learn.
Very much so. Well, Daniel, thank you so much. This has been an excellent conversation. I know everybody listening is going to love it. So thank you so much, and we will definitely get back and get with you again and discuss further.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Midnight in Kentucky. What you have just heard is Midnight in Kentucky in conversation with Daniel Wilson and Jeese. What a conversation it was. You got everything in there. You got balls of disembodied light. You got UFOs. You got drones, and much, much more. So what do you think about this whole thing?
I thought it was an epic conversation.
Yeah.
I've known of Dane. I haven't known him personally, but I've known of him pretty much the whole time I've been here in Russell County, and he's been on the radio.
Yeah, he's a very prominent radio personality here in the county as well, as you guys could probably tell from the interview.
And some of the stuff we talked about, you and I already knew.
Right,
yeah.
right.
But some of the stuff he brought up blew my mind.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And then some of the stuff he mentioned, like the video that he gave to the news station over Bowling Green and also gave it to YouTube, got taken down.
Right.
To me, that makes me scratch my head like, what could these drones be?
Yeah.
And who don't want you to research them or who does not want you to see this.
Right. Well, it seems like, only select people are seeing these things.
Yeah, and I guess maybe people are... What's that line in Sturgill Simpson's song called Arms?
Nobody's looking up for a drone, everybody's looking down at their phone.
Yeah.
And that's the same way with UFO. That's really the same way with everything these days. And that goes into investigations as well. Nobody really wants to do the digging because they think, well, I'll get on the internet, I'll pick up my phone, and somebody will have already done the investigative work for me. Which, we are happy to do the investigative work. Yeah. But when you're doing this, do your homework. I mean,
Right, exactly.
Look around. Sometimes looking around can offer you more insight than anything else.
Right, just taking a few nights and watching the area.
Right, exactly.
And, this could be, these drones that we're discussing with him, could be anything from, an amateur drone operator with too much money, just putting their hobby. Maybe they're being a little overzealous, breaking some regulations. It could be some type of NSA program. And then again, it could be Google trying to experiment with some new way.
Maps.
Yeah, Google Maps, or give everybody free Wi-Fi somehow.
Fair enough.
It could be a number of things, but still, there's a lot of questions to be answered with that.
Yeah, completely. So, what did you think about all of Daniel's UFO encounters in these places where, we have had several UFO... in these places that we know of to be UFO hotspots.
Yeah, well, when we was discussing with him, and we was like, well, where's this location at? And then he told us, and how, in my head, I was thinking, oh my gosh, this is the exact same spot that you and I have talked about for years.
Yeah.
And people in that area has seen the same thing.
Yes.
And let's not forget that one night we had the RF disruption back in, I guess it was 1999, 98?
Yeah, late 90s, mid-late 90s.
Yeah, where all the radio signals and all the TV signals were just messed up. He was picking up signals from China. The scanner radio was picking up stuff from all over the country.
Right.
AM and FM had a station on every channel.
Yes.
And it was localized to that very area, because when I left and I went back home up on Old Columbia Road that night,
it was
by the time I got past Salem, it stopped.
Oh, yeah.
So it all was localized to that little vicinity there.
The Eli corridor that we talked about with Daniel in this episode, yeah.
So there's definitely something to this corridor, and maybe that's what these drones are looking for. But there's definitely something to this area, that Daniel mentioned, that we mentioned in previous podcasts, that you and I have talked about for years.
That we have shared photos recently of UFOs that have been seen over there. And there are several reports. It's not an uncommon thing for somebody local to post on Facebook or to just be talking about them seeing UFOs over that area.
Right.
And it's very ironic that these drones are over that area as well. Yeah. And maybe these UFOs are these drones. Maybe these, in more ways than one. Maybe people are misidentifying them. Maybe these drones are some type of, shield for these objects, and they're implanting that image in our mind that these are drones and they're not actually drones.
Right.
I don't know. I do know it's going to get a lot weirder before it's, probably going to get a lot stranger before we figure this out.
I think so. I think before it's oversaturated, even if we do get an answer.
Right.
It's going to get pretty wild.
Oh, yeah. Of course. It always does. Yeah. It always gets weirder. Again, we want to send a very special thank you to Mr. Daniel Wilson for coming on and talking with us today. One of the best conversations we've had in regards to this localized phenomena in our area. So we just want to thank him. If you guys would, please check us out on Facebook,
Twitter,
the website, Spotify,
iHeartRadio.
Everywhere. We are everywhere. Check us out. Send us emails. Send us messages.
If you got anonymous tips, or if you would like to be interviewed on the podcast to similar we done Daniel, and tell us your story.
Yeah.
We'd love to have you.
We'd love to have you. Get in touch with us. We got a lot of big things coming up in 2020, so stay tuned to our social media for those. For Midnight in Kentucky, I'm Ben.
I'm Steven.
Till the next moon rises, Nightowls. Good night.
You've been listening to Midnight in Kentucky,
A Ransom Letter Publishing podcast.
Join us on Twitter and Facebook.
Or get in contact with your questions, comments, or stories of high strangeness
at midnightinkentuckypodcast@gmail.com.